The whispers at Bitterwood Lodge, a dense fog clung to the aged pines that lined the remote road leading to Bitterwood Lodge. It was late evening when Andrea Morgan arrived, her hands trembling on the steering wheel. The journey had taken longer than expected, delayed by stormy weather and a dead cell phone. She had come to Bitterwood upon hearing rumors of something sinister, murders or disappearances. No one was entirely sure, in this old Victorian retreat that once housed travelling artists and reclusive authors. Now it stood half forgotten at the end of a long gravel path, its windows dark and uninviting. Parking her sedan in front of the lodge, Andrea stepped onto the muddy gravel. The building's tall silhouette loomed over her, its tower spire piercing. The swirl of clouds above, a single dim light flickered in the foyer as if welcoming her into its maw. She inhaled a shaky breath and reminded herself why she was here. She was a journalist, one known for digging up stories others hesitated to touch. Something in the wind told her this time might be different, that the shadows here concealed a deeper, more personal horror. On the doorstep, Andrea paused. The door was slightly ajar, revealing a narrow crack of yellow light. She pushed it open with caution. A musty scent mingled with the faint odor of something acrid, maybe mothballs or old candles, wrapped itself around her. The foyer stretched. Before her, complete with a wide wooden staircase curving up into darkness. Oddly, there was no one at the reception desk. An old clock ticked somewhere in the distance, marking each second with ominous finality. "Hello?" Andrea called, her voice echoing in the silence. No answer came. She set her duffel bag down on a rickety chair, took out a small flashlight and flicked it on. Its beam cut through the gloom, illuminating chipped paint and dusty portraits. The faces in those paintings seemed to watch her, eyes following her every movement down the hall. If the rumors were correct, staff had abandoned the lodge months ago. Yet the stories of lights at night, strange apparitions and fleeting silhouettes continued to filter back to the nearest town. Andrea could almost feel the presence of something, someone, in the corridor. She tried each door on the ground floor. Most rooms were locked or cluttered with sheet-covered furniture. At last, she found the drawing room, a once grand space, with tattered drapes and an unlit fireplace. A sudden rustle behind her made her spin around, heart thudding. She raised the flashlight, only to find the long, moth-eaten curtains swaying in a draft from a cracked window. The storm outside was intensifying, rain tapping on the glass in frenzied bursts. The battered shutters banged, momentarily revealing a glimpse of the overgrown gardens, then snapping shut with a loud crack. A corridor to the left beckoned. She ventured down it, noticing that some of the frames that once held paintings were empty. Torn scraps of canvas hung from the corners. Others had pictures so darkly hued it was impossible to decipher their subject matter. A prickling sensation ran up her spine when she caught the shape of a silhouette at the end of the hallway. As soon as her flashlight traced the outline, it vanished, leaving a hollow space where someone, or something, had stood. Andrea swallowed, forcing herself to stay composed. She was here to find the truth, no matter how unnerving it might be. The corridor turned sharply, leading to a room labeled "Office" in faded gold lettering. Inside, Andrea's flashlight revealed dusty shelves piled with manuscripts, rotting, logs and boxes of correspondence. A large oak desk stood in the center. Andrea approached it, rummaging through stacks of forgotten letters and scribbled notes. Most of it seemed like mundane business records, but one letter, dated from 8 months ago, caught her eye. "I cannot in good conscience remain here any longer. The nights are filled with sounds I cannot explain, and too many guests have disappeared. Without a trace, please come for me, or at least send help. The walls whisper secrets no man should hear." Andrea's gut churned. She flipped the letter over, hoping for more clues, but found only water stains. She tucked the letter into her coat pocket and made her way out of the office. The next step was to find a room to stay in for the night. She did not relish the idea of sleeping in the car amidst the storm. At the top of the grand staircase, the second floor had several doors marked with room numbers. Most were open, revealing disheveled beds and furniture that had seen better days. Room 209 had a rusted key in the lock. Andrea gave it a twist and the door swung open. By flashlight, she found a relatively clean bed with its sheets still intact. Though coated in dust, it seemed like the best option. Thunder rumbled overhead, shaking the walls. She carefully closed the door and set the flashlight on a small side table, investigating the drawer. Inside was a single black and white photograph. It showed a group of lodge guests smiling stiffly at the camera, everyone dressed in 1920s attire. The date scrawled on the back read April 13th, 1928. She felt a shiver at the sense of time collapsing. Another distant thud sounded from the hallway. Andrea decided to barricade herself in for the night. She pushed a dresser against the door as best she could and tried to rest, though every creak of the floorboard out in the hallway set her nerves on edge. Sleep came fitfully. She woke with a jolt, heart pounding in her ears. The storm had intensified, shaking the shutters violently, but it wasn't just the wind. She had heard voices in the corridor. Gathering her flashlight, she slid the dresser aside and cracked the door open. A flicker of orange light bathed the hallway in dancing shadows. It was a candle, held by a figure wearing what looked like a long, old-fashioned robe. The robed person vanished around the corner before Andrea could call out. Summoning her courage, she stepped into the corridor and followed the faint glow. Her path led past shuttered windows and peeling wallpaper, each thunderclap resonating through the walls. Eventually she reached a narrow staircase going down to what seemed like the cellar. The candle's glow disappeared into the darkness. Below, she hesitated, gripping the banister. A single beam of moonlight illuminated a centuries-old plaque on the wall. It read, "Wine cellar, staff only." Andrea realized she was likely heading into the bowels of the lodge, a place where more secrets might lie buried. She had to know. She descended slowly, each step creaking, the damp air thick in her lungs. At the bottom she discovered a low-ceilinged passage lined with dusty wine racks. Broken bottles and spilled wine made the floor slick. The robed figure was nowhere to be seen, but candlelight flickered at the end of the passage, beckoning her deeper. She followed it to a hidden room, blocked by a heavy, partially open door. Inside, the stench of decay caused her stomach to tighten. The candle flickered on a low table, revealing crates, sealed boxes, and several dusty objects that looked like personal belongings. Shoes, purses, watches. Her flashlight quivered in her hand as she noticed something more disturbing. A row of tattered clothing arranged by size, some stained with what looked like dark blotches. Horror churned in her gut. These must have belonged to missing guests. Suddenly, the robed figure reappeared behind her. Andrea spun around to face them, breath catching in her throat. The figure lowered the hood, revealing a pale-faced woman. Her eyes ringed with exhaustion. She looked as though she hadn't seen sunlight in days. "Why are you here?" the woman asked in a raspy whisper. "You should have left when you had the chance." Andrea tried to keep her voice steady. "Who are you? Did you write that letter I found in the office?" "Elise." A flash of sorrow and rage danced across the woman's features. "Elise was my sister. She tried to warn everyone. She couldn't leave. None of us can." The woman wrapped her arms around herself. "The lodge won't let us." Before Andrea could respond, footsteps echoed from somewhere behind the crates. The woman shoved Andrea aside and bolted away, her robes billowing in the candlelight. A second presence materialized, tall, gaunt, eyes flickering with a sinister hunger. Andrea recognized him from an old photograph pinned on the lodge's foyer wall. A former caretaker, but one rumored to have died decades ago in a fire. Yet here he was, face contorted with insane glee. A harsh whisper escaped his lips. "No one leaves the lodge. You have to stay." The secrets are ours to keep. Adrenaline kicked in. Andrea broke for the door, ripping it open and dashing through. The passageway. Ignoring the caretaker's frantic shouts behind her, she sprinted upstairs, nearly tripping on the final step. The corridors felt alive with swirling shadows and faint, disembodied voices. She needed to get out, needed to warn the world about what lay in the cellar. Finally, she reached the foyer. Rain pelted the windows. Without looking back, she flung open the front door, ignoring the caretaker's distant yells. She staggered. Outside, the storm's force nearly hurling her to the ground. Her car was within sight. Relief coursed through her as she grabbed the handle, only to find it locked, her keys inside. Heart hammering, she peered through the window. The keys dangled from the ignition. In her panic earlier, she had forgotten them. Lightning blanched the sky. A reflection in the car window made her freeze. The caretaker stood right behind her, silent as a statue. She whipped around, prepared to run or fight, but was met with an empty expanse of gravel. The caretaker had vanished. Strangely, the front door of the lodge was wide open still, as if beckoning her back inside. A horrifying question burned in her mind. Was there ever a caretaker at all, or had the lodge played tricks on her? Summoning the last vestiges of her courage, she circled around the lodge, searching for another way out. The old greenhouse inn. The back was unlocked, its door banging in the wind. Inside, potting tables and broken glass formed a ghostly labyrinth. It was there, amidst the shattered pots and creeping vines, that she found something she never expected. A second car. It was the same make and model as hers, same color, even the same dent on the rear bumper. Heart racing, she peeked inside. On the passenger seat lay a worn notebook with her own name on it, and a photograph of her standing in front of Bitterwood Lodge, dated 2 weeks prior. But she had only arrived that night. Had she? She flipped open the notebook. The last entry read, "I have tried to leave again and again, but I always end up back at the lodge. It's as though it exists in a loop, forcing me to relive the same dreadful night. Every time I try to escape, I discover new truths, but they change nothing. I'm trapped in a twisted reflection of reality, and the caretaker, or the lodge itself, will never let me go." Andrea's breath came in shallow gasps. She felt as though her world had fractured. Lightning illuminated the greenhouse again, revealing more cars, each hidden under vines and debris. Dozens, maybe more. All the same make, same color, same dents. Each presumably belonged to a previous visitor, who tried to leave but was pulled back into this endless loop. Each must have found the same horrifying secret. They had been here before. They would always be here. A bolt of lightning struck nearby, and in that instant, Andrea understood the final, stomach-churning truth. She hadn't come to investigate the lodge for the first time. She, too, was trapped in this cyclical nightmare, returning again and again in search of an escape that didn't exist. At that realization, thunder roared overhead. The caretaker's voice drifted from somewhere in the darkness. "Welcome back.